Thank you so much for joining us for our new webinar series at Syntaso. Super excited today to cover the number one platform engineering problem you've never heard of, platform decay. And it's my privilege to present Abby. I'm sure many of you know Abby, but she's a CNCF ambassador, team topologies advocate, lots of great experience from the coding all the way through to understanding the business value. I'm super excited to hear what she's got to say on this topic. So without further ado, welcome Abby to the stage.
Thank you so much. It's a very kind introduction, and I am really excited about this topic today because I find that often when we're talking about platform engineering challenges, we're talking about symptoms that are independent of each other. And what I'm realizing is that these are all rolling up to a much more systemic problem around platform decay. But it is a phrase that's new that we're going to see if this resonates with you and your experiences in building platforms. So, to get started, I want to jump straight into the takeaways. What are we going to be talking about today is around platforms and the fact that platforms have existed for a long time, many, many years, decades even. And the ones that are successful are the ones that are intentional about building. And that's the exciting trend in platform engineering today. And being on webinars like this proves that's something that's already on your mind and really great. Platform decay can feel like something you don't want to admit to, but in reality, what we're seeing is that this is something that affects organizations of all maturity. The real leaders in the industry are the ones who can manage that decay. It's not that they don't have it. And we want to make sure that these webinars are really concrete and useful for you. So, we're going to dive deep into a few of those symptoms and see if this starts to resonate and include both how to identify, how to understand, and how to fix and rectify if you do have these symptoms in your organization. The three we're going to talk about is a lack of adoption, a poor return on investment, and that feeling of the never ending migrations. The final thing that I want to call out is a thread that you might notice throughout this whole talk, which is that the focus on delivering your platform as a product is something that's going to bring you success in your endeavors. When I say as a product, what I mean is that everything that you're delivering is something as a service. These services provide your users with access to what they need and clear contracts on how to maintain that. Those services are also backed by automation for your processes, even when that includes manual steps for compliance and other things. But that automation of making those manual steps repeatable and clear and tracked is key. And finally, the more we use of software and infrastructure and platform capabilities, the more we need to be able to keep them secure and up to date. And to do that in a maintainable way requires fleet management rather than one off solutions. But I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit, talking about these takeaways. So I want to get started with making sure we're on the same page on some of our key topics here. And so I'm going to start with platform engineering. And I realize that many of the people here are going to have their own favorite definitions of platform engineering and probably have read lots of great inputs. But I want to call attention to this Gartner quote and specifically the last few words, because the key to platform engineering is actually the outcomes. And the outcomes that we care about is the acceleration of the product team delivery of that revenue generating customer value. Now, throughout these two paragraphs, there's things I care deeply about, and you'll hear me talk a lot about in other areas. Self-service capabilities, automated infrastructure, developer experience. These underpin the success of the outcome, but the key is that outcome of accelerated value to your revenue generating customers. The other thing I want to call out from this fantastic Gartner article is the diagram on the right. It really places platforms in an important part to your business's success. You see at the bottom, infrastructure, which you can think of as commodity and things that are common across the industry. And you see at the top, those really bespoke business value that you're producing through your product and service teams. The platform's job is to take those commodities, those things that are common across the industry, and identify what is common for your product and service team success and make that something that's available as a service in your organization, thereby reducing the overall cost to supporting it. The other side of the conversation today, though, is about decay. And decay is just a definition from a dictionary here. And it often revolves around this idea that something that was suitable, was fit for purpose, no longer is meeting the needs that you need, maybe even falling as far as to say into ruin. And we see decay around us everywhere. You can see it in seasons changing. You can see it in potholes in your neighborhood roads. And as I said it right at the beginning, decay is not something that we can avoid. It's something we can manage. And so when you think about that pothole in your neighborhood, one pothole is okay. You can fill it in, you can smooth it out. But when you get enough of these potholes, it starts to change the ability to use and to get value from the road. All of a sudden, cyclists like myself have to avoid that route, and it changes that behavior. But no one's here to listen to me and my gripes about the council filling in potholes, because what we're talking about here is decay in software and internal platforms. And that does have its own ways of showing up. More specifically, what we see is that the return on investment calculation just isn't panning out because our investment is so high with growing maintenance rather than adding value. On the other side of that calculation, we see that the return isn't where we think it can be or should be because we're not getting the right adoption from inside of our organizations. In addition, besides the investment we're making into these platforms, in some cases, there are competing implementations internally, which not only duplicates the cost associated with the implementation, but actually creates additional overhead around compliance and standardization challenges. With all of these different ways of doing things and with just the ever changing landscape of technology, migrations can create a large load on the platform delivery. And finally, we often are finding ourselves optimizing and supporting new technology, which is fantastic for innovation. But we also have to remember that a large part of many successful businesses today are built on generations of technology from years ago. And if we don't invest in making that developer experience, that acceleration of value deliverable, then we struggle as a business to provide that end user value, which is the target of a platform. But if we try and talk about every symptom of decay, and I'm sure there's more than I've listed here, we won't end up talking in depth about how you can make a difference in your organization. So I'm going to instead focus on digging into just a couple of those examples. The first of which is going to be lack of adoption. This very nice post by Mark O'Neill, who's a Gartner chief of research, talks a lot about how platform engineering is in a phase of moving from the peak of inflated expectations towards the trough of disillusionment. But just like decay is not something to be embarrassed about, neither is this. This is showing that we're getting value. And it's natural for technology to take this journey. But what Mark is calling out here, and actually is quoting Paula Kennedy, who's COO with me here at Syntasso, is that what we're seeing organizations feel is that they're investing deeply in creating platforms with the hope that there will be adoption and value generated, and that is not coming to fruition. This is the idea of the field of dreams, and it's often of broken dreams. What we're seeing is a large frustration on both sides of this equation. The people building the platforms are investing time, energy, heartache into building something that they believe is going to be valuable to the business, and they're not seeing that. And of course, on the other side, people are being asked to pick this up, and it's not meeting their needs, and it's distracting them from the value they want to be creating in their teams. If you're seeing this in your company, you may see a few different behaviors. Obviously, adoption is the thing we're talking about here, and you may see low adoption. But aside from just low adoption, the people that are adopting may be really high cost to you to get onboarded onto the platform. What I mean by this is that each person coming on board may be requiring unique features which you were not planning on introducing to the platform. And so there's sort of these blockers in the way. And the people who are actually coming on board may only be able to come on with really narrow use cases, despite the fact that the platform was built with the wide whole organization in mind. And hopefully that you are starting to introduce these ideas of developer and developer experience surveys that are becoming more standardized, more powerful. And you might be seeing some reflection in those of the developer experience not being met by the internal platform. And while this experience is a indication and a sign of platform decay, we have to understand why this has come about so that we can look to fix it. So how can we have found ourselves in this situation? One of the key issues is not understanding the developer needs when building the platform. This isn't to point fingers because in reality, product ownership of like skills of platforms and design thinking is not something that has come naturally and commonly to infrastructure for a long time. So this is something that you may need to still be growing internally. In addition, while there might be value being identified and delivered, if it doesn't have that as a service feeling where people are able to access their needs on demand when they need it, that might be creating friction for adoption. Despite possibly getting it right on building the right things for the right people, building it in the right way also matters. Making sure to support ongoing day two operations as a first class concern is a key part of adoption in the long run as well. Specifically, as people join into this platform, if they start seeing instability because of the scaling issues, this is going to struggle to continue that adoption curve. And if when they're on that platform, they're feeling instability due to the platform itself not being able to manage its upgrades and updates in a easy way, transparent way to the users, or if they are not able to manage their applications, updates and upgrades, they may struggle to stay on the platform in a productive way. But nothing is insurmountable, and these are all things that you can evolve and improve on. More specifically, applying a product mindset by introducing surveys if you're not already doing them, and targetedly fixing the things that actually come up in those surveys is extremely important. Part of this is making sure to be iterative in this delivery. While you might solve all the problems in that survey, if you do so in large batches, people aren't sure when or if they're going to see changes. Building trust that you're listening to them and producing small improvements is going to give you space to continue to improve because people are going to trust you. In addition, we have to acknowledge that platforms are not just technical, and investing in some of the auxiliary aspects is really important. In particular, there is this idea of enabling teams, which was introduced by Team Topologies, that could be really effective to build into your platform group. Using an enabling team that acts as almost an internal consulting team supporting the onboarding to your platform can smooth the friction for onboarding while also passing back where that friction exists to the platform team to be able to possibly remove the need for this in the long term. Aside from just enabling teams, you also need to think about that landing team. Why should people even talk to these enabling teams to get onto the platform? Well, you need to market to them. You need to make sure that people understand the value this platform is meant to provide and why they should care. So, adding this to your platform group may also address some of those challenges with adoption. Moving on to the second deep dive, I want to look at this low platform return on investment. And I'm going to come back to this really great post by Mark from Gartner. And I'm going to call out a different section here where he talks about the fact that platforms are going stale. Not only that they're going stale, but that we're expecting to see more of this. And that's because platforms, as I said, are not new. They have existed, but we need them to really meet the needs of the users and sustain for the long term and not become a money pit. When you end up spending all that money to maintain them and you're getting low impact, that return on investment isn't there. And this is felt from both sides, but particularly felt by the people building the platform. They feel underproductive. They feel like they're unable to move the needle on the needs that the platform is supposed to be providing, and that's frustrating and tiring. In your organization, you may see a low return on investment if you have things like unclear outcomes. If you're not sure what is coming up as a deliverable for your platform, it's hard to know if you're getting a return at all. Not only having a roadmap, but having one that you're seeing an iteration and deliverables for on a regular basis is super key. And those deliverables must be attached to the company OKRs to really see that return on investment applied to the business value, to those end user value creations. In addition, if we're talking about return on investment, we have to acknowledge that sometimes there's duplication of effort through these shadow platforms. Everywhere from someone putting down a credit card for a SaaS product or a cloud provider to someone trying to build a competing internal solution. And that is actually the most dangerous, which is where you end up with multiple internal teams competing for budget, getting duplication and confusion across the entire organization of where the focus should be for the team. But while we can acknowledge that the low return on investment is a form of platform decay in motion, we can have to also understand where it came from to solve it. One of the key parts of this is that if you are implementing projects to create your platform, rather than treating it like a product, you'll see short-lived actions that are hard to maintain in the long run because they haven't been built for years of support. In addition, you may find that teams are excited about some of the technologies that they're building. They're actually pitching the platform too low. They're building things that are competitive with public commodities like cloud providers rather than building in your bespoke value on top of them. In addition, when you talk about project work and large releases, those big bang releases often end in a big bang, and that results in expensive cleanup, only further reducing that return on investment. And finally, that attachment to the business value. Without clear ownership, clear budget, clear roadmap tied to both business and user needs, you're going to struggle to get that return on that investment that you're pushing forward. So, how do we turn that ship around? Well, we again can apply that product mindset, this time focusing on the scoping of the work that we're delivering, making sure to tackle that one problem, that one team, and really deliver value early. I'm a huge advocate of the fact that platforms should be something that can support your entire ecosystem of your organization, but that doesn't mean you need to start with the widest part of your ecosystem. Start focusing on the things that bring in high value early days because these are the things that are going to be defining how your platform works and maintaining them for the longest. So get high value early on. In addition, I would advocate that a centralized platform group is the right formation for this. And a lot of people will worry about this because they're worried about having centralization and blockers and bottlenecks. But this platform group should be held accountable, not just for delivering capabilities, but actually delivering a framework by which the organization can make their platform successful. Extensibility and standardization, which allows the experts around the organization to contribute their expertise and capabilities to that platform, will ensure success in the long run. Finally, making sure to understand that commodities have existed and we should be building on top of them rather than trying to compete with them, but also that they start to emerge. And while something might have been unique to your business a few years ago, your team needs to be thinking always about how to offload the now commodity aspects of your estate to third parties so they can focus on the bespoke bits. So our final deep dive here is going to be around the never-ending platform migration. And this is a feeling that anyone who works in platforms knows well. The better you get at migrations, the better you feel as a platform engineer because it's what you do day in and day out. And it's because, as Charity Majors, who is a thought leader and CTO of Honeycomb, says, if you're not migrating, you're stagnating. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. Is another way of seeing this. And so we aren't saying here that migrations are bad. It's that never-ending feeling and that high investment. So when you want to be avoiding multiple migrations, it's because migrations can be really scary and can create a lot of cost if they are big and long running. We see a challenge and a real problem with migrations when we see that we have multiple large scale ongoing migrations at a time, which are splitting the team's attention. And in particular, when we see the team spending more than 50% of their time on these migrations, thereby spending a small percentage of their time on innovation, that's where we start to see problems in the organization. Even worse than the platform team being eaten alive by migrations is when they allow that to leak out to their users. When users are impacted by each migration, then we have a multiplying effect on things. This can be felt by the fact that users are unsure what generation to use and that they even see multiple versions of options in documentation that make for challenging to follow suggestions. It's even worse, I can say, when you're trying to migrate your documentation itself, because then you don't even know where to look for the support. How can you have found yourself in this position of having never-ending migrations lead to this platform decay or as a symptom to platform decay? Well, you may have seen that project mindset result in only big bang solutions and big bang migrations where you're doing one-offs. In addition, if you haven't invested deeply in that platform API and that's as a service mindset, that's where you end up with that leakage of platform migration cost affecting even their using teams. However, migrations are important. So that's again, I'm not saying not to do migrations, but the fact that if you haven't built day two requirements and scaling into that platform, you may even need a rebuild, which is an extremely expensive thing to do and then to migrate to. And of course, we have to call out the fact that with new joiners to organizations, especially in positions of leadership, they come with their own experiences and their own hopes and goals. And that can result in needing to start fresh. And depending on the churn in your organization, you may see that. Again, we can tackle this though, right? We can apply that product mindset in order to have a continuous evolution rather than a single release, which means that we can drive value driving migrations rather than just projects to manage end of life issues before vendors can come at us with large bills to support projects once they've gone end of life. In addition, that centralized platform group can be held accountable. They can be held accountable not to complete migrations per se, but to make sure that they can measure and report on user impact, thereby encouraging them to build a platform which enables migrations without that impact. In addition, this can lead to a better implementation of fleet management being built in from the design phase, making sure that this is something that can be updated, upgraded, and kept secure in an ongoing fashion. And that is that day two as a first class concern being built in. So wrapping up, I hope what you've come to the conclusion of through this is just how much platform building benefits from being done intentionally. In addition, that platform decay is something that you've probably felt, and that isn't something that you should be embarrassed about. It's something that you can control and be intentional and invest in maintaining and um, dealing with. In addition, we've dove deep into 3 specific symptoms around platform decay, specifically looking at how to identify, understand, and rectify or fix those issues. We looked at what happens when users aren't coming on board despite building your platform, what happens when that investment in maintenance is overrunning that return on investment calculation, and that feeling of never ending migrations without moving forward and innovating. And in each case, taking some of the aspects of platform as a product and applying them, making sure that you set up a contract with your users that enables them to have an on demand experience of a service and those capabilities, making sure that the process is consistent and automated across the organization, and making sure that the entire platform is set up both for the platform itself and the applications running on it for fleet management, for ongoing maintenance is a key to success. I hope that means that you now see some of these symptoms rolling up to a more systemic challenge that we can tackle head on with these simple ideas. Thank you so much for your time. I hope some of these blogs might be useful for digging in a little bit deeper. And I'll leave these up for a little while we talk through hopefully some of your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Abby. Love that talk. Lots of great takeaways. I see the emojis flying. I'm not sure if you can see them, Abby, but I'm seeing like streamers. I'm seeing hands up. Fantastic work. Amazing. If you've got questions, folks, please do put them in the Q&A tab. I've got a few prepared here already. We've got some folks pinged us some DMs earlier on. They couldn't make it, but they were keen to ask some questions. So I'll start with those, Abby. So you mentioned about sprawl, and Mark's asked, what's the difference between sprawl and decay in terms of platforms?
Yeah, I think sprawl can be another one of those symptoms, right? With sprawl, what you're seeing is a huge range of technologies that are hard to manage. So, if you want that fleet management, you need consistency of rolling out across. And so, I think sprawl also can be an indication that you are not focused on the product value of the platform that you're delivering because you're seeing sort of exciting trajectory of certain solutions without seeing it be something that is a coherent story and kind of tied back together again. So another symptom, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Abby. Great stuff. So Ali's asking, how long does it typically take before a platform starts to decay?
I mean, how long is a piece of string to a certain extent? But decay is something that happens almost immediately, right? It's a matter of when it starts to affect you. And that's why designing in a process that can mitigate against hard passing decay is so key to platform success. I think there's some things that can trigger decay faster than other things, with particularly if you're seeing significant user need changing. So the things like the pandemic coming out of nowhere and completely changing how organizations require what they require from their platform is something that can create a swing quite quickly. In addition, depending on what software you depend on, how quickly their release cycle is going to be a cadence of your decay. And of course, a churn on the team supporting the platform itself will cause more decay because people will be less likely to understand where in the platform
Mm.
they should look to do extensions and implementations, and therefore creating a little bit of challenge there sometimes.
Yeah, totally makes sense, Abby. Totally makes sense. We've got a question in the live Q&A. Again, folks, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A in the box. You should see it on your screen. And someone's asked, you've blogged in the past about thinnest viable platform. Is that a possible approach that can help with platform decay? Interesting question.
Ah, I love it. Yes. So, just to summarize quickly, what my blog was is that thinnest viable platform is a term that was introduced by the Team Topologies book, which was released in 2019, and I think has had some challenges with being differentiated from minimum viable product platform. P. And in this case, I think it's important to realize that minimum viable is about getting fast feedback and starting small, whereas thinnest viable is focusing on that long term reduction in cost to maintain of a platform or of a product. And so I absolutely believe that that's a huge part of a marker of success of that management of decay, even though decay is natural. And so I did reference that idea of how you want to be building on top of commodities, but commodities also emerge over time. And a really successful team is able to adopt those commodities as they come about. I've given the example before of zero downtime deployments of databases in the cloud. It's just not something that many of the cloud providers provide today. I've built harnesses in the past that can do that because that was valuable to our business to reduce the impact to our end users. But oh boy, am I ready to offload that to the cloud when it becomes available. So that would be where I'd look to thin out my platform as soon as possible.
Lovely. Thanks, Abby. I've got another great question here. So focusing more on the business side, it's saying, what are the business drivers for creating a platform? And the context in brackets, I'm struggling to justify budget and people. Interesting one.
Yeah, that is always a challenge, and to be honest, it's going to be a little bit dependent on each organization what the key driver of the day is. To be honest, but what I tend to see with my own organization in the past and our customers today is that there's three kind of core areas you can explore. So the first is that you need to get faster to market. You're in a competitive area of the market, and you need to be able to get new features out to support your users to stay ahead of your competitors. So moving faster as a business can be a big driver for some organizations. But of course, this day and age, we're getting out of the zero interest rate or ZERP era. And so cost can be also another big driver. By minimizing the different approaches within your organization, you actually enable the expertise of less people on things like database expertise or networking expertise to spread across the organization. So, cost management, both in management of the capabilities as well as in management of kind of policies around shutting down dev environments and tracking where costs are being applied is a big driver for some of the organizations.
Fantastic. I know we're getting close. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to
I'd
interrupt.
say
Go for it.
I was just gonna think the third one is one that I think everyone struggles a little bit with, unless your title is CISO, but is I think just that security aspect. Again, it's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
we focus so much on developer experience, but part of that is success of the business to stay alive and to be productive, and that depending on what industry you're in, can really be driven by having safer delivery of software. And so building those compliance mechanisms in so that you can sleep well at night while also moving faster and cheaper is great.
Love it. Oh, you mustn't forget the third one. Apologies. Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you very much. A final question. I mean, we're getting dangerously close to the end of time. There's been so much great stuff already shared. I've got here, what are the most important properties of a platform to increase the odds of avoiding platform decay? Interesting one.
I think the properties are ones which allow for you to change that platform without impact to your users. So from a implementation point of view, those are things like clear contracts and extensibility and maintainability of the software that you're delivering. But the key here is just that product thinking, which enables you to react to changes in both your needs and your users, and being able to plan for those changes by having that separation between what a user experiences and what a provider is actually interacting with and able to change under the scenes.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much once again for sharing all your knowledge. Amazing. Thank you all for attending as well. You can find more at syntasso.io. Pop along. There's various Slacks you can join there as well and ask us questions. You're always welcome to reach out via the contact us form and find us in other places. Abby and I love questions, so please do hit us up on those. But thank you so much for your time. We'll be in contact with the recording soon. Thanks a lot.